Stop for a moment, take a slow breath, because sometimes something reaches you at exactly the right time. A message, a sentence, a feeling, or even a video you almost ignored but somehow decided to open. And this reading carries that kind of energy. Someone has been thinking about you deeply. And today, your name came up in a conversation that revealed more than this person intended to reveal. Maybe they spoke to a friend. Maybe they mentioned you to someone in their family. Or maybe they were completely alone, thinking about you, and finally admitted something to themselves that they had been trying to avoid. Whatever the situation is, the important part is this. Their feelings are becoming harder to hide, and the energy surrounding this connection suggests that something has shifted, not necessarily in the outside world yet. You may not have received a message, you may not have seen a dramatic sign, you may still be wondering what this person is thinking. But internally, something has changed. So stay with me, because the energy coming through this reading tells a story about attraction, emotional realization, hesitation, and finally, movement. The first energy coming forward is the Two of Cups. This is the energy of emotional recognition. It represents two people who feel something between them that is difficult to explain logically. There is a sense of familiarity here, as though something about the other person simply feels different. And that is exactly what I feel surrounding this connection. This person does not see you as ordinary. There is something about your presence that stays with them long after an interaction has ended. They may remember your voice, your expressions, something you once said, or even a small moment that you probably considered insignificant, but they remembered it. And today, when they talked about you, that emotional reaction came through. They may have tried to sound casual. They may have said something simple like, there is just something about them. But underneath those ordinary words was a much deeper feeling: admiration, curiosity, attraction, and perhaps even a little frustration because they cannot completely understand why you occupy so much space in their mind. The next energy is the Knight of Wands. This brings passion, movement, and impulsive emotion. It tells me that this person has been going back and forth internally. One moment they think they should approach you. The next moment they convince themselves to wait. Then they think about you again. And the cycle begins all over. They may be trying to appear calm on the outside, but internally they are much more emotionally involved than they want anyone to know. And today, something slipped. Maybe their expression changed when your name was mentioned. Maybe they smiled without realizing it. Maybe they suddenly became more interested in the conversation. Someone around them may have noticed, and that it is important, because sometimes the people around us can recognize our feelings before we are ready to admit them ourselves. Now we move to the Ace of Cups. This is where the reading becomes much deeper. The Ace of Cups represents emotions beginning to overflow. It suggests that what this person feels is no longer just curiosity or attraction. Their emotional attachment has been growing, slowly, quietly, perhaps even against their own expectations. They may have started this connection believing they could keep things simple. But somewhere along the way, something changed. They began caring. They began wondering where you were. They began imagining conversations with you. They began replaying moments between you. And eventually, they realized they were no longer standing outside the feeling. They were inside it. There is also an insecurity here. This person may secretly wonder whether you would choose them. They may question whether they are good enough for you or whether you feel the same intensity that they feel. That insecurity could be one of the biggest reasons they have remained quiet. Because when feelings become important, rejection becomes frightening. It is easy to confess when you have nothing to lose. But when someone becomes precious to you, suddenly every word feels dangerous, and this person may be protecting themselves from that possibility. Now look at the energy of the sun. The sun brings warmth, happiness, and openness. It tells me that thinking about you genuinely makes this person feel good. There is something about you that brightens their emotional world. Maybe you make them laugh. Maybe you make them feel understood. Maybe you simply bring out a version of themselves that they do not show to everyone. And that is why your name may have been spoken with such warmth today. They may have tried to hide their excitement, but the feeling was still there. Someone listening to them could probably tell that you matter. The Eight of Wands follows. And this is where things begin to move. The Eight of Wands represents communication, momentum, and events that suddenly begin unfolding after a period of waiting. If this connection has felt slow, confusing, or stuck, this energy suggests that things are changing. A conversation may happen, a message may arrive, an unexpected encounter may occur, or this person may simply become more direct than they have been before. What matters is that they are moving away from endless thinking and towards some kind of action. And sometimes the first action is very small, a simple message, a casual question, a reaction to something you post, an excuse to start a conversation. Do not underestimate small movements. Sometimes a tiny opening is the beginning of a much larger change. Then comes the Three of Cups. This energy suggests that other people may be involved in the story. Someone may have encouraged this person. Someone may have noticed the connection. Someone may have said something that made them stop and think. Perhaps a friend asked, "Why do not you just tell them?" Or perhaps someone simply pointed out what was already obvious. And hearing another person say it aloud may have made this person realize that their feelings are visible. That can be uncomfortable, but it can also be liberating, because sometimes we need someone else to reflect our truth back to us before we are willing to face it. Now we have the energy of the Hierophant reversed. This represents breaking away from old rules. This person may have created emotional rules for themselves. Maybe they promised themselves they would never get attached. Maybe they decided relationships were too complicated. Maybe they convinced themselves they should remain distant. But you have challenged those beliefs without even trying. The walls they built are becoming weaker. And that is why this connection may feel unpredictable. They are learning how to deal with feelings they did not plan for. Then comes one of the strongest energies in this reading, the Lovers. The Lovers is not simply about romance, it is about choice. It is about reaching a point where someone has to acknowledge what they truly want. And this person appears to be reaching that point. They may not have spoken the words yet, but internally they are beginning to choose. They are choosing whether to remain silent or become honest, whether to keep watching from a distance or step closer, whether to protect themselves or risk vulnerability. And the fact that they spoke about you today may have been part of that process. Because once someone begins speaking their feelings aloud, even indirectly, it becomes much harder to pretend those feelings do not exist. There is another message coming through strongly. This person remembers a specific moment with you. It could be something you said, something you did, a particular look, a conversation, a moment when you made them feel seen. And they return to that memory privately. You may have forgotten it. They have not. That is the strange thing about emotional connections. One person can walk away from a moment thinking it was ordinary, while the other person carries it for years. You may not realize how much of an impression you have made. Now the Four of Wands appears. This is beautiful energy connected with stability, reunion, celebration, and building something real. It suggests that this person is not only thinking about the present. They may be imagining what life could look like if you were actually part of their future. Not just fantasy, not just attraction, but practical thoughts. What would it be like to spend more time together? What would it feel like to have you consistently in their life? Could this become something stable? Those questions may already be forming in their mind. And then we receive the Star. The Star is about hope after uncertainty. It represents healing, faith, and the feeling that something once distant may finally become possible. If you have been trying not to hope too much, this energy speaks directly to that part of you. You may have told yourself not to expect anything. You may have tried to become emotionally detached. You may have wondered whether you imagined the entire connection. But the message here is not to punish yourself for having feelings. You can remain grounded while still allowing yourself to believe that something beautiful is possible. And finally, we have the Page of Cups. This is the messenger, the emotional message, the unexpected opening. It can represent someone finally expressing something they have been holding inside, maybe through a text, maybe through a conversation, maybe through a small confession disguised as a casual statement. Whatever form it takes, the energy is gentle rather than dramatic. It feels like someone testing the waters. They may not reveal everything immediately, but they may give you enough to understand that something has changed. And when that moment comes, pay attention not only to their words, watch their behavior, watch whether their actions become more consistent, watch whether they make an effort, because real feelings eventually need real-world expression. The cards can offer reflection, but your own judgment should always remain your guide. And if certain initials, names, zodiac signs, or details resonate with you, take them as possibilities rather than guarantees. The strongest message of this reading is not a particular letter or prediction. It is the emotional shift. Someone who once tried to control their feelings may be realizing that those feelings have become too important to ignore. Someone who stayed silent may be approaching a moment of honesty. Someone who once kept you at a distance may finally be wondering what would happen if they stepped closer. And perhaps that is why this message found you today. Not because you need to chase this person, not because you need to force an outcome, but because sometimes your role is simply to remain open while life reveals what is real. Do not chase. Do not beg for clarity. Do not abandon your self-respect, waiting for someone else to make a decision. Let their actions speak. If they truly want to come closer, they will eventually find a way to show you. And when they do, you will not have to convince them of your worth. You will simply receive what they are finally ready to offer. So take another breath. Release the need to know every detail right now. You do not have to solve the entire story tonight. Something may already be unfolding beneath the surface. And whether this person reaches out tomorrow, next week, or later, remember this. Your value does not depend on whether someone confesses their feelings. You were valuable before they noticed you. You are valuable while they are figuring themselves out. And you will remain valuable no matter what choice they make. If this reading resonated with your situation, take the message that feels meaningful and leave behind anything that does not. And if you believe someone has been thinking about you more than they admit, leave a heart in the comments. Sometimes the quietest connections carry the loudest emotions. And sometimes the conversation you never heard is the one that changes everything. Stay open, stay grounded, and most importantly, let what is meant for you come towards you without having to chase it.